Let's talk a little bit about the serious stuff and what has happened over the last couple of days. The Starmer meeting in Washington with Trump, do you think it achieved anything?
Can I just say, look, I want to park my friendship with Keir. People know it's long-standing and stuff. Just objectively speaking, I just don't think a visit from a British Prime Minister in the current context of what's going on could have got any better. Let's just pause and reflect where we were this time last week. And by the way, every day's a different day with Donald Trump in the White House. A real concern that the USA is vacating the pitch in Europe. A real concern the USA is considering leaving NATO. A real concern that President Trump thinks that President Zelensky is a dictator. A real concern about trade wars and about tariffs. A real concern about how President Trump sees the United Kingdom. And that's the context of Keir Starmer's visit to the USA. And I think Keir Starmer said some time ago, country first, party second. And I think, he's got to govern as a Prime Minister in the national interest. And that means, I'm afraid, going to the White House and spending time with Donald Trump.
But if you're a Ukrainian in London, can you be any more assured about what Trump is going to do as a result of that visit?
That is a genuine fear Ukrainians I speak to in London have. And there are tens of thousands in London who've made this a home away from their home because of Putin's illegal invasion. And today, Keir will be hosting European leaders in London, including President Zelensky. And I make this point gently. We now have a Prime Minister back on the international stage. Over the course of the last 10 days, Keir Starmer has met countless European leaders, spoken to President Zelensky almost every day.
Yeah.
I agree there are still some concerns about the USA's commitment to Ukraine. No, there is. And we've got to make sure we engage with the USA so they stay engaged with
Well, let me put it this
Ukraine.
way. Is President Trump on our side, on the West side? Are you confident? Can we rely on him, do you think?
Well, I think that's the moot question.
You don't know.
I can't comment, save for what I see in the media, and save for what the Prime
What's your
Minister-
instinct?
I think when I see and hear what President Macron said after the visit this week that he had, when I see and hear what Prime Minister Keir Starmer said after his visit, President Zelensky, of course, was in the White House over the last few days. Again, a week ago, we were really concerned whether Trump would say anything that wasn't offensive about Zelensky. So look, it is a roller coaster. I accept that, and every day's a new day.
Do you agree with Zelensky that he lives in a universe of misinformation?
Well, I think President Zelensky has now rode back from that comment
But
that
what
he
do you think,
said.
sir?
Well, I think there is a concern in relation to the track record of President Trump in relation to attacking fact-based journalism.
Do you think that President Trump deserves a second state visit?
Well, he's going to have a second state visit.
But do you think that we should have invited him so early on?
I can understand the reasons why it's been decided to give President Trump a second state
Would you
visit.
welcome him to London?
Well, look, we live in uncertain times. Look, we're not sure whether he's going to come to London. We're not sure the details of his state visit.
Definitely come to
Be.
London, Mayor Khan. You'll know he will. Would you welcome him to London? Is the president welcome in London?
Well, what I think will happen, my prediction, should President Trump come to London, is because, contrary to the views of others, we have freedom of speech. I think people in London will express their views about that.
But you're the mayor of London. Assuming he comes to London, which you almost certainly will you welcome him to this city?
Look, people know my views about Donald Trump. That's not going to change.
So you don't welcome him?
Look, I think it is important to engage with the President of the USA.
In which case, why won't you say you welcome him?
But look, if he does come to London, what I'd invite him to do is spend time on Trafalgar Square, maybe on St Patrick's Day, or the New Year, or Eid in the Square, or Diwali in the Square.
Well, would you offer to him to take him around the city?
I think it is important to actually bust some of these myths. I think it's important to show those people who believe the contrary that diversity is a strength, not a weakness.
Well, would you offer to take him around to some of the places he's talked about? He's talked about
Absolutely.
no-go areas. Would you take him to some of those so-called no-go areas?
I'd invite President Trump to a good curry on Brick Lane. Maybe go and visit a place of worship in London, but also his team as well. Because listen, there is, I'm afraid, various echo chambers across the globe. There is the rise of nativist populist movements, and I say in a non-patronising way, a lot of prejudice comes from prejudging. And actually, one of the joys of the great city of London is our diversity. So if it is the case that President Trump comes to London, it's an opportunity to show President Trump the joys of our diversity. And by the way, that includes not just religious minorities, ethnic minorities, but people of different sexual orientations as well.
Did you see the video that he posted about Gaza?
I didn't, but I've read about it.
You see that it depicted Gaza as a kind of hotel destination, resort destination, Trump hotel, Trump Gaza. I mean, how do you react to that?
Look, I think it's really important to, have principles that you stand by. So whether it's Gaza or whether it's Ukraine, I think the people of Palestine should decide their future, not the President of the USA.
Do you think it was
or
offensive?
Prime Minister of Israel. Just like in Ukraine, I think the people of Ukraine and the President of Ukraine should decide its future rather than Putin or President Trump. I've not seen the video, I've read about it.
But it's clear lots of Palestinians did find it very offensive. You've got a President of the United States talking about making their home into a hotel resort with pictures of money, dollar notes flying from the sky.
Listen, when you've got a situation where, more than 1,000 Israelis were taken hostage and killed by Hamas, situation where almost 50,000 men, women and children have lost their lives in Gaza, hundreds in the West Bank. This is not an issue of frivolity. I think it's a time where we need USA to be an honest broker so we can get a two-state solution. That means.
Do you think Trump has been a bit frivolous with regards to Gaza?
When you talk about, I said all I've seen is what I've seen in the media, the reports of it. When you talk about video and you mentioned the dollars and so forth, I think it's frivolous at a time when people are mourning the loss of their loved ones, both in Israel, Gaza and the West Bank.
Yesterday we saw Andrew Tate and his brother fly to the United States, fly to Florida. It has been suggested by some, although Trump didn't confirm it yesterday, said he didn't know anything about it, that part of this is from a push from the Trump administration internally. Obviously, he also faces charges in the UK. Do you think he should be extradited back to the UK?
Look, as I'm speaking to you, Lewis, I'm conscious that it's possible one of the victims of the crimes he's been accused of could be listening to this. And we should always begin with the victims. He's been accused of some very serious things.
He denies them, of course.
And that's why we have due process.
Yeah.
And that's why there should be a trial. We believe in open justice. And it's really important to remember that. And the impression this gives, fairly or unfairly, is some people are above the law. And I think that's wrong, particularly in these sorts of cases. I'm also conscious, as the Mayor of London and as a parent, the rise of misogyny. I see some of the images young people look at, on TikTok and on YouTube. And some of these algorithms lead to men having a warped view of girls and women. And it is really important to, rebut some of this misogyny. And what upsets me is, unlike what we're doing now, which is having a conversation, discussion, challenging each other, on some of the algorithms on social media, you only have one-sided views. And the perception this will give is not just some people are above the law, but you're rewarded for some of these views.
So would you like to see him extradited to the UK?
I'd like to see due process
face
take its
justice.
course. Yeah, absolutely.
And
by the way, this applies to everybody. It doesn't just apply to Andrew Tate. Anybody who's accused of serious allegations, serious charges should face the music.
We saw earlier in the week something really interesting. I think you're uniquely or nearly uniquely placed to qualify. I don't know if you saw the video that was circulating online a few days ago of Fraser Nelson, the journalist.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
and a couple of journalists from a couple of people from a right-wing podcast, who said that Rishi Sunak wasn't English, that he couldn't be English. He was British, but not English. And Suella Braverman actually backed that up in an article in The Telegraph earlier in the week, saying that she said herself that she was not English. She couldn't be English because she wasn't, quote unquote, ethnically English. The logical extension of that, if they're right, is that you're not English and many other people of your ethnic background are not English. What would you say to that?
I'm a really stoic person. I'm quite resilient. There are very few things that upset me. That does upset me. Because it strikes to who I am. And it's very personal to me. I'm a father. It affects my children. I'm not going to pretend it's not upsetting. Why do I say that? Look, part politics. I have a huge amount of time for Rishi Sunak. He is our country's first Hindu Prime Minister. He is somebody who I think, in years to come, will continue to be a role model for young people from all backgrounds. And I say this in a respectful way, so please don't take me being offensive. If you close your eyes and listen to Sunak, he's like Jeeves and Wooster. I mean, he's quintessentially English.
Vocal cords made of tweed.
I mean, this guy went to Winchester or Eton or Harrow, I've forgotten.
Winchester. Yeah.
He went to Oxford. He was a banker, for goodness sake, and became a member of Parliament for the Conservative Party in William Hague's former seat. what else does Sunak have to do to prove his Englishness? He even got a damn Labrador, copying me, by the way. And so, let me the problem, Lewis, and the reason why it upsets me. How many generations of Khans or Sunaks do they need to be before we're considered English? Are we saying that because the colour of our skin will never be pale, we can never be English? Are we saying we've got to give up the religion that we belong to, be embarrassed of our ethnic origin? What is the consequence of this? And I say also we're an island. We're literally an island, and going back X thousand years, there weren't actually many human beings here. So actually, all of us are migrants to this island, whether you're Anglo-Saxon, Viking, Norman, Norman Vikings, or from the subcontinent.